Hi friends. So, ask and ye shall receive. A bunch of people in the comments of my last video, which if you haven't seen it yet, I will link it up here. It is my victorious return to YouTube. By the way, thank you so much for the insanely, exceedingly warm welcome. It was overwhelming and so gratifying. I just want to say thank you so much. So in that video, I suggested that maybe I sit down and do a little get ready with me just to catch everyone up on how my hiatus was. I guess I kind of forgot that some people on here might actually be interested in how my life is going. So anyway, it's going to be a really chill video today. I'm just going to put on a really basic beat, nothing too fancy because it's already going on 6 o'clock here and I just kind of want to get into my pajamas and eat leftover mac and cheese. So why don't we just jump on in to the Get Ready With Me where I just catch you up on what I've been doing since I've been away from YouTube. So grab a snack, grab a hot beverage, grab some makeup if you must, and let's get ready together and let's get started. And no, before you ask, this is not an engagement ring, I promise you. This is a ring from my great aunt Rita. I inherited it, and this is the only finger it fits on. Let's just jump on in. I'm not gonna really talk about any of the products I use today, but of course, as always, I will list everything down in the description box below. I honestly think that these videos are the hardest to edit just because you get so tired of hearing yourself talk. But I haven't done a Get Ready With Me in a dog's age, mostly because the world went to shit, and so anything that I would have to say to y'all would just be a lot of, life sucks, doesn't it? Which of course, we're all aware of, so no need to reiterate that. For those of you who don't know, I am, when the world's not on fire, a theater performer. I am an actor, singer, dancer. I generally busy myself with musical theater, which to be fair is not the most lucrative job at the best of times when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. But in the last couple years or so, our industry has essentially shut down. I mean, theater is just basically one very large, very intimate indoor gathering. So like most live events, theater kind of just took a huge hit. It's been rough, to say the least. I mean, what would you do if your whole entire livelihood just got ripped out from under you and you didn't know when it was coming back? But for the last few months, you know, before Omicron decided to go and ruin things again, things are looking up. I think a lot of companies Canada-wide were hopeful to be able to bring back holiday shows for 2021. It wasn't without hesitation or trepidation, but I think theater companies and the community as a whole were very hopeful for the holiday season. The Arts Club, which is the primary professional theater company in Vancouver, decided to kick off the 2021-2022 season with Dolly Parton's Smoky Mountain Christmas Carol. I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute, just so you can get a picture in your head of what on earth kind of show that would be. Of course, when my agent came through with that, I was confused. It's a show that nobody had heard of, primarily because of the fact that it had only been done once before the pandemic hit in Boston. It is a brand new work, and it is exactly what the title says. It is an adaptation of Christmas Carol set in Appalachia in 1936 with music by Dolly Parton. Never in a million years did I think that would ever be a thing, not to mention a thing that I would end up doing. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of country music. Of course, we all love Dolly. She's an icon. I just thought, you know, this isn't the show for me. I might have to sit this one out. And then of course, remembering that it would be the first show that you've done in 2 years. And so there really is no sitting this one out. I auditioned for it back in June, I'm pretty sure. They asked us to send in a tape of us singing a country song, obviously, which was my first roadblock because I don't listen to a lot of country music. So I was kind of stumped on what to sing. I thought maybe I could get away with doing a Bonnie Raitt song and pass it off as kind of country, but I figured that would be cheating. And you know what? This is the first audition I've had in 18 months. I can't just half-ass this thing. So I thought, you know what? In for a penny, in for a pound. Let's do Jolene. You know, it might be a bit on the nose, but listen, when the hell else are you going to sing a Dolly Parton tune in an audition, if not for a Dolly Parton musical? And honestly, everyone was auditioning blind because there's no cast album to go download. There's no bootleg videos of it on YouTube, which was actually kind of liberating in a way. Didn't have to worry about knowing the material beforehand because nobody did. Everyone was kind of on a level playing field. I remember being genuinely surprised when I got the callback. But the callback involved reading some sides from the show. It involved doing a dance call. Imagine coming back to an audition room after almost 2 years. The energy in the room was wild. Not necessarily loud and boisterous, but almost intense. Everyone was very, very focused. And I think everyone felt the stakes being raised quite a lot, because as we now know, nothing is guaranteed for the future, and who knows when the next show will be. What I wasn't expecting was this incredibly warm and welcoming atmosphere from the audition room. Our director, I think, may be one of the kindest, most generous people in the industry that I've ever met, and that definitely shone through in all of my callbacks with him. He just made me feel so welcome in the space. Most regional theater communities, at least in Canada, are quite insular. It's kind of like an exclusive club in a way. If you can get into the club, you will work and you will make money and you will make a living. But if you're not, well then you're kind of SOL. And so, of course, first callback back from the pandemic, I was very hesitant to get my hopes up. But it did ease off the pressure a lot. I just was grateful to be in the room, period. It had been so long that I was just grateful that they chose me to take a second look at and to be in a room with a director and a choreographer and a music director again. That alone was a gift. And to play with text and to have fun and take direction and laugh, it was a treat. I remember telling all my friends who do know my struggle with being seen in this city at many different points in this process of going through auditions and callbacks. If Dolly Parton's Smoky Mountain Christmas Carol is my arts club debut, I will eat my shirt. A couple weeks later, lo and behold, Dolly Parton's Smoky Mountain Christmas Carol was my arts club debut. Honestly, it was unbelievable to book the first thing you audition for after your industry has been on hiatus for 2 years. So they sent us the scripts, the scores, and it was the only time we really got the ability to read ahead and get any sort of grasp on what this show was going to look and sound like. Looking back, reading it for the first time, it didn't seem too promising. I truly feel like the success that we had with this show had a lot to do with just how incredibly talented and generous our cast, creative team, and crew were. I will tell you, it is not the strongest script. I knew, however, upon reading it, that with the right team, the right people, you might be able to make something really, really stinking heartwarming. I mean, if you're wondering what kind of musical Dolly writes, it's a very, very sentimental one. There was just one more snag, one more fly in the ointment, and that was that we only got 2 weeks of rehearsal. Most professional theater companies will give you 3, even 4, and these are 8-hour days, 6 days a week, so it's not part-time rehearsal, but still, 2 weeks? It's pretty tight. But you know what? It was the first show back. I think we were all just so collectively happy to be in a rehearsal space again. None of us were complaining. We were a bit scared, but we weren't complaining. The whole process was a huge whirlwind. We were learning music that we had never heard before, and for someone who doesn't read music, that's really hard. It's like trying to do math problems before you know how the formula works, if that makes any sense. So you just kind of use context clues and hope for the best. But this group, it was such a joy to sing with them every day, to get back to harmonizing with people again, which is something I hadn't done live in a room together in a very long time. You get to hear that first glorious chord ring out in the room. There's nothing like it. We very quickly realized how much we loved singing together. The level of cooperation amongst this cast was absolutely staggering. Being a person who struggles with a lot of anxiety, I don't think I've ever felt truly safe or comfortable with a cast before. My fear, pretty much constantly in the back of my head, is how am I screwing up this interaction? How am I making a mistake? How am I burning a bridge? In my head, of course, inevitably, I am. Like, so easily someone can get a bad taste in their mouth about working with you. It is such a difficult realm to navigate that a large part of me for the last decade has wanted to just give up and do something else for a living. And I don't know if it was the combination of such a prolonged absence from the industry or this group of people in particular, but I've never felt so at ease. I think it was something that Bobby, our director, kind of told us from the beginning, was that you don't know when this is going to be taken away from you. So you can't focus on the end product. You have to appreciate and enjoy every single moment along the way. And I think that really resonated with everyone in the room. And truly, it ignited something in us. I've never felt more camaraderie with a group of professionals before. I think I'm just gonna pull Pat out again. Because it's here, we can just throw on a fun shimmer on the lid and call it done. Okay, brows and talking and brows. This will be interesting. So a little bit more about the show itself. It is a cast of 11, including the Tiny Tim. And it's basically the same story that most people are familiar with. The Dickensian tale of Scrooge. It's a tale of redemption. All the classic Christmas Carol elements are present. They're there. If anyone wants to know my favorite adaptation, it's obviously The Muppet Christmas Carol. There is no other Christmas Carol in my opinion, and that is just fact. You can fight me on that and I will win. So it's a plot most people are familiar with in some way or another. The twist on this one is that it's set in 1936 Appalachia in a place called Morton's Holler, basically an old mining town. And all the roles are divided among 10 people, so we all are doubling up on different roles. Basically everyone besides Scrooge is ensemble, and then they jump in and out of different characters as the show goes on. One of which for me was the Ghost of Christmas Past. It has the most variants that I've seen. You know, Christmas Present is usually someone quite jolly, like Santa Claus. Ghost Future is someone usually shrouded in darkness, doesn't say a whole lot. But Ghost Past is typically the ghost that most writers take the most liberties with, if that makes any sense. So I was very curious upon reading it what kind of twist they would put on Ghost Past for this adaptation. Turns out it was nothing. They really didn't give her anything in the script to grab onto. For example, the Ghost of Christmas Present in this script is very specifically described as a coal miner. The Ghost of Christmas Future is very specifically a fiddler who doesn't speak, but only speaks through their instrument. But Ghost Past, nothing. Nothing to go off of, just some pretty generic dialogue. Even during the callback, I had no idea what to do. I remember reading it and just thinking, okay, so this could be anyone. As a Hail Mary, I just decided to draw inspiration from Dolly Parton. And I know it's very unoriginal, but clearly the team was enjoying the direction I was going in the room, because when we got to rehearsals and we started breaking down Ghost Past in the scene work, I was told right away that they really liked where I was going with it and just to continue on in that same vein, but just go farther, bigger. And I take that as a huge compliment. It's either that or they just really didn't have the time to come up with anything better, which is altogether humanly possible. I'm just gonna take some bronzer and throw it into the crease because we're not doing anything strenuous today. So in the design presentation, the whole concept that they came up with was that she was going to be depicted as a train conductor. They had based the entire design off this one vintage photograph that they had, and it was this female train conductor. It must have been the late 1800s because she was wearing a long skirt, but the uniform was just so striking. She had this little cap. So the costume designer did a very faithful recreation of this one photograph. They custom made almost all the pieces for everyone in the show. This coat was double-breasted, had beautiful buttons, pockets everywhere. And then to add the ghost flair, they decided to cover the costume in timepieces. I had one slung over my shoulder, one on my hat, one on my breast pocket. And at first the design choice felt a little bit out of left field, but one of the design elements in the set had a little miniature train that actually worked. It went across, it was a steam train. It had a little track that ran across the top of the stage. Puffed smoke and everything. It was very, very cool. And it works with the setting of the mining town. But yeah, she basically guides most of Act 1. She's there to lead Scrooge through all of his past Christmases. And I've never done a show where my main function on stage was to observe. And to stay present and focused and in character for that length of time, not saying anything, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I remember the first time we ran Act 1 from beginning to end, I left that run feeling absolutely emotionally spent. I was exhausted, but it really made me invested in Scrooge's story. Like, the only reason Ghost Past was put on this earth is to guide Scrooge. That forces you to be 100% invested in his redemption. What are we gonna put on the lid? I think I wanna do something that will pair with a red lip. Let's take some of that. There's something really insanely special about being the blueprint for a part. And so it's kind of limitless, which can also be incredibly paralyzing. There were many days when I left the stage thinking, is this anything? And I definitely thought Ghost Past was the role that I was going to be most recognized or praised for, or get the most reception from the audience. But turns out the sleeper hit of the show was Scrooge's housekeeper, Mrs. Dilber. The people just love Mrs. Dilber, what can I say? So after 2 weeks of rehearsal, we go into what is called tech. For those of you who don't know, tech is usually the time in the theater where everything that isn't the acting is figured out. So we set lights, we figure out sound cues, we balance the sound with all the microphones in the band. Pretty much every other technical aspect that doesn't involve acting is ironed out in tech. They're traditionally very long days, starting in the early afternoon and ending pretty late at night. You kind of forget what day it is, what month it is, what your name is. You don't see the light of day for a very long time, but it's the part in the process that I think most theater nerds will look back on with the fondest memories. There's something magical about hitting the stage for the first time, and with each element getting added to the mix, it just gets you more and more excited. And the whole cast comes out in wigs and costumes together for the first time to potentially try and run the show. Everyone looks so different, and especially for period pieces like this, it really immerses you and the audience into the time period. And especially with someone like myself who is covered in tattoos, has 2/3 of their head shaved, putting on a wig and a costume is a pretty big transformation. I mean, it really is playing dress up for a living. So this is all still before Omicron really reared its ugly head, so we actually got to operate for the majority of our run at full capacity. It was mind-bending to be standing on the Stanley stage in front of a full house. I couldn't believe that we got the privilege to do that again. I remember all of us looking at each other in the curtain call, the first full house we had. I think we were all kind of still in disbelief that we were even there, that we even got to do this, that we even got this far. And even looking out onto a sea of masked faces, there was just so much joy in the room. There's not a whole lot of silver linings to the last couple years in our industry and the absolute uncertainty of whether or not these stages, these theater companies will survive. But the one thing I can take away from living through unprecedented times is that I don't think I could possibly ever take my job for granted ever again. All right, enough of this sentimental nonsense. All right, just to give myself a breather, I'm gonna go pop on some lashes off camera and I will be right back. Lashes are on, same ones as my last video. I honestly do think that we were kind of lured into this false sense of security throughout this process, because as much as we knew that it could be taken away from us at any second, for myself personally, I kind of just ignored that, thinking that the worst was behind us, that we were getting back on track, and then Omicron had to go and
fuck shit up.
I know that we have to say that we're grateful that we got to even have any shows at all, that we got to welcome audiences back, period. But there was this huge part of me that was absolutely devastated. This was the most fun I'd had on a production in years, and it was so unceremoniously ripped away from us. And out of every single holiday show across the country, we were quite possibly the last to close. You know, we could see the wave of Omicron coming a mile away. We just kept watching in horror as show after show after show shuttered and canceled their runs. It was like 2020 all over again. And we had been so lucky to have so many amazing shows under our belt, with full houses, standing ovations, warm laughter and tears. There was something so special about this show in particular, something so honest and so heartfelt about this adaptation that our audiences truly just embraced. We live in a world full of sarcasm and cynicism, misanthropy, that a show with this much heart and this much sentimentality, probably at any other time before COVID, would have been far too saccharine, far too sweet. But I think given these very special particular circumstances we were in, audiences just ate that shit up, and we also completely embraced it hook, line, and sinker. I remember there was not a cynical or sarcastic bone in my body during that show, which is so against the grain for me as a person, as a human being. There was just something about this show, something about the magic of Dolly Parton. Our director said it best. He said, this show has no subtext. There's no reading between the lines. There's no double meaning. It's just on paper, what you see is what you get. Once Bonnie Henry enacted the new restrictions due to Omicron finally hitting BC, we knew it was only a matter of time. I think most of us were willfully ignoring the inevitable, and then the more realistic half of the cast were just biding their time. Either way, I think right to the very end, the word of the contract for me personally has been gratitude. And I think most people on the team would agree with me. That's the word that just kept rolling over and over in my mind in every moment of every rehearsal, every 15-minute break where we were running through harmonies, every quick change, every offstage dance party in the wings. The word was gratitude. Oh, okay. Put on some lip liner and give yourself a minute. By the way, this is one of the Buxom Powerline plumping lip liners in the color Real Red, which is not a lie. I think this might be pound for pound exactly the look I did for my last Get Ready With Me. Pretty sure. Not really sure what's so plumping about this lip liner, but I like them just the same. Still not crazy about that little brush. All right, shall we highlight? I think we shall. Little Milk Flex highlighter, that's a throwback. In the end, I think we were able to eke out 40-ish shows. And I think we just have to be happy with the fact that anyone got to see the show at all. Now more than ever, I think we need storytelling and the energy of being in a room together. I mean, since the dawn of humanity, people have gathered together to listen to stories. I think it's one of the things that reminds humans that we're all human, if that makes any sense. I don't know, I'm getting far too profound for my own good. But you could feel it in the room that people were craving that intimacy. People wanted to laugh, they wanted to weep, they needed that permission. So that being said, I do think that we are extremely fortunate to have had the run that we did. I know that so many other shows across the country were cut way too short. Our closing night was supposed to be January 2nd, and then our final performance turned out to be Christmas Eve, which we didn't know until after the fact, because after that show, we just never got to return, except to pack up our dressing rooms, which, by the way, the women's dressing room was a whole vibe. I'm just saying, it was a vibe. I think the two biggest heartbreaks I have in regards to how the show ended and when it did was that we never got to have a proper goodbye or farewell to this show, to this team. The other huge loss, and this is just a personal one, my parents never got to see it. Their tickets were scheduled for December 28th. I'm sure none of us expected to make it to the end of the run, period. I was just hoping against hope that we would make it to the 28th at least. There was an attempt to get my parents in earlier after what we weren't going to know was our final show on Christmas Eve. We had Christmas Day off, and then our next show back was supposed to be Boxing Day. And so there was this very valiant attempt to get my parents in on Boxing Day. Boxing Day rolls around. I get to the theater around 11 a.m. I make it down the hall into my dressing room, and I'm just about to start putting on my makeup when I hear this kerfuffle outside the door. People shouting, check your email, check your email. I guess I'd made it to the theater before the announcement was made. One of us had gotten COVID and the show was not going to happen. And at that point, there was still a chance that we might return after isolating, and if only one person had contracted COVID during that time and we all tested negative, we would all come back on the 29th, which of course meant either way, my parents were shit out of luck. I left the theater just sobbing into my friend's shoulder. Everyone was on edge. We were terrified, but all I could keep thinking about was my parents never got to see my arts club debut. And I know that's such a selfish thing to think about and to grieve, but this is compounded with the fact that it's taken me 10 years since I graduated college to finally get on that Stanley stage. There's nothing like playing a show in your hometown, and to have my parents in the audience bearing witness to that was all I'd ever wanted. I'm lucky in the fact that I can say that my parents are my biggest supporters. I wouldn't have been able to do what I do without them. Their support means everything to me, and so when I get the chance to give back to them, showing them just how far I've come, it's the best feeling. And that's all I really wanted. Even if we only did one more show after Christmas Eve, that is all I would have asked for. Alas, there will be other shows at the Stanley, I really hope, and I shouldn't be so hung up on it, but it was the first thing I thought about when I booked the gig. And so to have that moment taken from me is something I'm still grieving. With any luck, they'll remount it next year. And I know we've been saying this every year since the pandemic started, but here's hoping by next year we'll all be able to gather and experience theater together without fear. All right, with that, let's spray her down. When I pull back and look at the big picture, I couldn't have asked for a better debut, and I couldn't have asked for a better team to do it with. I think the combination of unprecedented times, our unique circumstances, and our love for our art form turned this into one of the most special experiences of my career. And Omicron can't take that away from me, so suck on that, COVID. I think I could keep reiterating myself until the cows come home, but I gotta go and have dinner. I hope that this was in any way interesting to listen to. I hope it wasn't just a complete snooze fest. I have no idea what this is gonna look like. Editing me has no idea what she's in for, oh my god. But with any luck, this hopefully shed some light onto what I do for a living. I haven't done a Get Ready With Me in a long time, so I'm sure that this was slightly awkward and probably a little bit stilted, but hopefully I can round up enough footage so that this is remotely intelligible. Videos are so much easier when you're not just talking about yourself. So with that, I'm going to love you and leave you, but before I do, please let me rattle it off to you real quick. Here are the many ways that you can help out my channel. You can give this video a huge thumbs up, you can comment down below what you thought of everything, you can subscribe. Any and all engagement with this video is crucial to its success in the algorithm, so if you have a few spare seconds, please engage with this video. You can follow me on other social media, I will leave those right there. I do have a Patreon, but I have suspended it for at least 3 months to make up for the lack of content that I was producing there over the course of this contract that I was on. But if you are a patron, I will still be giving you early access to all of my videos during the suspension of the billing periods. And with that, folks, please stay safe, stay sane, wash your hands, wear a mask, stay home if you can, get vaccinated if you can, get boosted if you can, for the sake of live theater, please. Just keep doing your best, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!